Hi everybody, I'm here with Bushwhacker. We're talking about how to set up a backcountry kitchen. My name is Lorna. I've been camping for well over 20 years, and this is what I've learned along the way. So we're going to talk about the basic gear that you would need to take with you in the backcountry for cooking and preparing meals on a trip anywhere from a few days to a week or two. The most important thing you will need is a stove. This is quite an old stove. We'll show you new versions of the equipment later. This has a separate canister that is not pressurized. You pressurize it with a pump. This is an MSR Dragonfly that is well over 20 years old and has been used on many trips. So I can highly recommend these products. These are my pots that are quite old and have seen many trips. We like to have one bigger pot that we fill with water on the trip and boil that first before we start cooking, and that's our hot water to prepare everything as we're working through the meal. And then we use the remainder to do our dishes at the end. And then we have smaller pots to cook a meal and a side dish in. The pots nest together. And the stove comes with, the pots come with a pot holder to hold the pots when they're hot. And I like to store that in a little cloth bag because when it's inside the pots and knocking around, it can scratch your pots a little bit. So for the stove, you would have a canister, either a pressurized canister, which we can show you. They come pre-pressurized from the factory, or this style where you pour the gas into the canister and attach the pump that fits the stove. A little trick, this is the cap that comes with the fuel bottle, and we put 2 zip ties on the cap. One, so you don't lose it, but also so this doesn't end up with debris and dirt in it, which would then end up inside your fuel bottle. So it makes it a little harder to attach the lid, but you will never lose your lid that way. The other thing that you will need as a basic piece of equipment is a water filter. We're assuming that for the backcountry kitchen, you are off-grid, and in our case, we use filtered water for everything. There are situations where you can just take lake water and boil it, but we prefer to filter our water first. So this is probably 10 to 15 years old, this filter. It's still working just fine. It's an MSR brand, and there are many different brands. There are now gravity filters where you don't have to pump them. This particular style fits on the threads of an Nalgene bottle. So these are what we use for our groups. We would have one big bottle as the filtering bottle, and then each camper would have their own individual bottle that they drink out of. So we have a communal bottle that no one drinks out of. We just use it for filtering, and then we pour into the personal bottles for each camper. If someone gets sick on the trip, that minimizes passing a cold around amongst the group. And these tall bottles take up almost the same space as the small bottles on the side of a pack, but you get to carry a lot more water. When you're cooking, you can either cook in a pot, in a stainless steel container that's closed, or you can cook in a freezer bag. It's not something that I've done, but you can rehydrate in a cozy. It's something, if you want to look it up, it's FBC, freezer bag cooking. It's a different style of camp cooking, but you still need a stove of some description to heat your water. These are stainless steel canisters from Clean Canteen, very similar to their drink bottles, which you can also use for the same purpose. But you can put food and boiling water in these canisters, which we'll show you on a couple of other videos. Put the hot water in with the food, close the lid, and take it with you. So in the morning you can make a hot lunch and take it with you, or you can do some of your side dishes in these canisters while you're cooking the other part of the meal, and then you open it up and everything's hot and ready to go. When you're cooking, you need some utensils with longer handles because these stoves do put out quite a bit of heat. So this is an actual kitchen spoon, or you can get folding utensils that specifically fit into your pot pack. These are by MSR and are also probably quite old and have been on many trips. This is a newer version. This is a GSI folding tong that also will fit inside. And these are super handy. This is one of my favorite things, which is a heat gripper so you don't burn your fingers when you're trying to touch a lid off of a pot. You'll need a camp knife of some description. These are super handy. This, I believe, is GSI brand as well. It's a pot scraper, so before you start doing the dishes, you can scrape debris out of the pot and not have your dishwater quite as dirty. So these come in very, very handy. Nalgene comes in a host of sizes that we use for many different items on the trips because they don't leak. So later we'll be talking about different cooking fats, and we really like this size of container to hold our ghee, which is a form of butter that we cook with. This one is salt, and this one happens to have dish soap in it. But again, you don't want things leaking, so it's great to have your dish soap in a container that you know is not going to come open. This is another favorite item. These come from the pharmacy. And when you're packing meals for camping, you want as little packaging and as little weight as possible. And if you only want a little bit of seasoning or a tiny amount of one item, these little pouches come in really handy, and we pack them out and reuse them for future trips. This is a towel by MSR that comes in super handy. We use them for many things on the trip. They come in different colors. And you can get them soaking wet and wring them out so you can use them to wipe things off. It's just handy to have a towel when you're working in the kitchen, the camp kitchen. If you need to rinse your hands off, then you've got a place to dry them other than your clothing, which will then smell like food. So we try to keep that on a towel. Once your meal is prepared, you need some dishes to eat off of. A person doing a single trip might just choose to eat out of their single pot, which makes sense. When we are cooking for a group, we do take plates or bowls with us. We don't tend to take both. If you get plates that have a lip on them, this is a generic brand, and I believe these are made for young children. You wouldn't need a bowl necessarily, but you can plan on which dishes you take along based upon what your menu is for the trip. So these bowls and these cups are by GSI. These also will work as bowls for a meal, so if you're trying to take a lot less gear with you, you can opt to leave the bowls at home and just take the cups. And if you are using the clean canteen containers for cooking meals, you can also use these as coffee cups or tea mugs, and they have the lid to keep debris from falling in your hot drink. These are the same or similar items that are brand new and available at Bushwhacker. And as you can see from the gear here, it pays to invest in quality gear that will last you a really, really, really long time. So hopefully this helps setting up your camp kitchen. If you have any more questions, stop by Bushwhacker and they'll be able to help.